Think your worst day, spilled coffee, dead phone, stuck in traffic, is torture? Try a machine that tears your limbs apart or cooks you alive while a crowd cheers. Welcome to the medieval world, where torture was a gruesome art form crafted to break body and soul. Today, we're diving into 9 of the most horrific torture devices ever invented. Which one would make you beg for mercy? One so vile, it'd shatter even the toughest among us. Stick around to find out what it is, and let's see if you can handle the horror. First, the rack. Imagine a wooden frame, like a bed designed by a sadist. Your wrists and ankles are tied to ropes and a crank starts turning. Slowly, your body stretches. Muscles rip like old fabric, joints snap like twigs. And if the torturer is in a mood, your shoulders pop out with a wet crunch. Used across Europe for heresy, theft, or even talking back, it was the go-to for forced confessions. In 1533, English monk John Frith was racked for denying the Pope's authority. His screams filled the Tower of London for hours before they burned him. You're awake, feeling every tear, while the guy cranking the wheel chats about his day. Picture your worst gym stretch. Then add a psychopath with a lever. At least it's a workout you'll never forget. And the worst part? They didn't always stop once you passed out. Sometimes they'd wait for you to wake up and then keep going. Bones weren't just dislocated, they were torn from their sockets. Some victims were stretched so far they grew inches in height, permanently crippled if they survived. Tendons snapped like guitar strings. And your spine? That starts to feel like it's unraveling. It wasn't just torture. It was a mechanical disassembly of the human body. And all because you said something someone didn't like. You didn't just confess, you begged to. Next, the Iron Maiden. It's a human-sized iron coffin, lined with spikes that stab your arms, legs, and sides when the door slams shut. Not deep enough to kill you fast, just enough to let you bleed out, trapped in a spiked embrace. Used during the Spanish Inquisition for heretics, it was more legend than widespread. But Nuremberg's Maiden in the 1500s left real corpses. You're locked inside, every breath pushing spikes deeper, knowing you're inches from death but can't move. Imagine being stuck in a spiked trash compactor, your screams muffled by iron. Forget claustrophobia. This is a nightmare you can't wake from. Bet you'd take a crowded elevator over this any day. And the spikes weren't random. They were strategically placed to miss vital organs. That way, you'd suffer longer, bleed slower. Sometimes they'd leave you in there for hours or even days, checking back to see how much agony you could take. The psychological torture was just as brutal. Total darkness, no sound except your own ragged breathing, no escape. Your body's trembling, impaled on cold steel, while your mind spirals into madness. It wasn't just death, it was a performance of pain. And once the door shut, no one opened it until you were silent. The Judas Cradle steps it up. Picture a wooden pyramid, its point sharp as a dagger, mounted on a stool. You're stripped naked, hoisted up, and lowered onto that point. Weights pull you down, letting gravity tear into your most sensitive areas. Used in the 1600s for witches and blasphemers, especially in Italy, it was pain and shame in one brutal package. In 1599, a Venice woman endured this for hours, confessing to witchcraft just to stop the agony. The worst part? The public humiliation. Your body exposed while it betrays you. Imagine your worst doctor's visit. Then swap the chair for a spike. Next time your seat's uncomfortable, be glad it's not trying to ruin you. But it wasn't just about physical pain. It was psychological warfare. The crowd? Watching, laughing, sometimes jeering. You're not just in agony, you're a spectacle. And that pyramid? It was reused. Over and over, never cleaned. So add infection to your list of tortures. Every inch you sink is another scream. A ritual of pain dressed up as punishment. Some victims didn't even die. They were left alive, permanently damaged, just to show others what happens when you defy the system. Gravity became your executioner, and dignity died long before the body did. Now, the Pear of Anguish. This metal device looks like a pear, but it's no snack. Insert it into your mouth, throat, or other places a screw turns and it blooms, ripping flesh or choking you. Used in France for blasphemers or women accused of adultery. It was a torturer's favorite for maximum cruelty. In 1633, a French thief's jaw was shattered by one. His muffled screams were all he could manage. The terror? Knowing it could keep expanding and you're helpless. Picture your dentist swapping tools for a blooming metal nightmare. This pear's not for eating, unless you're craving pure despair. Who knew fruit could be so evil? And let's not forget, once it was inserted, there was no mercy. Screaming only made it worse. Muscles tore, bones cracked. The device would disfigure you permanently if it didn't kill you outright. In some cases, it was a message. You spoke out, you sinned. Now open wide. It was elegant in the worst way. Small, silent, and devastating. No blood at first, just pressure. Then pain. Then carnage. A simple twist of a screw, and your insides became shrapnel. Next time someone offers you fruit, just hope it doesn't come with a key. The breaking wheel was a public spectacle. You're tied to a cartwheel and a hammer smashes your limbs bone by bone, while a crowd roars like it's a festival. Then, they hoist you up to die slowly, sometimes over days, as birds peck at your flesh. Used for murderers and rebels like Guy Fawkes's co-conspirators in 1605, it was torture as entertainment. The psychological gut punch? Hearing the crowd bet on how long you'll last while your body's a shattered ruin. Imagine a concert where you're the main act and the encore is your last breath. Talk about breaking a leg and every other bone. And they didn't swing wildly. They followed a pattern. Ankles, shins, thighs, forearms, all methodically broken in sequence. The goal wasn't to kill you quickly. It was to deconstruct you. Sometimes they wove your mangled body through the spokes like a gruesome sculpture. No medical help. No mercy. Just wind, sun, and the sharp beaks of crows turning your final hours into open-air rot, and all the while the crowd feasted, drank, and laughed like it was a holiday. In that moment, you weren't a person. You were the day's entertainment. The scavenger's daughter, the rack's cruel opposite, crushes you instead. This metal contraption forces you into a ball, knees to chest, until your spine and ribs scream. Invented under Henry VIII, it was used on political prisoners like Thomas Mehr in 1581. Blood poured from his nose and ears as his body folded like a bad origami project. The horror? Feeling your own ribs snap inward while you fight for air. Picture being stuffed in a suitcase that hates you. Yoga's relaxing, but this is flexibility training from hell. Bet you'd take a cramped flight over this any day. And the worst part? It looked harmless, just a hinged metal frame. But once they locked you in and started tightening it, your joints compressed, your lungs strained, and your veins felt like they might explode. Some victims passed out from the sheer pressure. Others stayed awake, drowning in their own blood as internal organs were crushed. The rack may have pulled you apart, but the scavenger's daughter folded you until something inside gave way. A silent, brutal collapse from the inside out, like being hugged by a bear trap. Saw torture is as brutal as it gets. You're hung upside down, and a two-man saw starts cutting, starting between your legs. The upside-down position keeps blood in your head, so you stay conscious longer, feeling every stroke. Used in the Roman Empire for rebels and deserters, it was slow, deliberate, and messy. The mental torture? Watching the saw creep closer, knowing there's no escape. Imagine your worst workout, then add a buzzsaw and a cheering crowd. At least you'd get a head rush before the end. Who knew carpentry could be so personal? And they didn't rush it. The torturers took their time, sawing slowly to avoid major arteries at first, ensuring maximum pain, not a quick death. The blade grinds through muscle, sinew, and bone, while you're swinging, bleeding, and somehow still alive. You hear every rasp of metal, feel every vibration in your spine. Sometimes they'd pause mid-cut, just to ask questions, watch your reaction, or let the suspense stew. It wasn't just execution, it was theater. And your final act? A slow descent into mutilation, from groin to gut, until silence. The thumbscrew sounds small, but it's pure evil. This tiny metal vise crushes your fingers or toes, one slow turn at a time. Used across Europe for minor crimes like theft or lying, it was a torturer's warm-up act. In 1590, a Scottish witch trial saw thumbscrews leave victims unable to hold a quill to sign confessions. The real pain? The torturer staring into your eyes, waiting for you to break. Imagine your phone's passcode being your screams. Forget carpal tunnel. This is finger torture with a medieval twist. Bet your worst paper cut feels like a hug now. And it wasn't just pain, it was precision. One turn too many, and the bone shattered like glass. Fingernails tore off, skin split. The pressure built slowly, the vise tightening as your nerves lit up like fire. They'd start with one digit, then move down the line until you cracked. Confessions were practically guaranteed. The tool fit in one hand, but the trauma it left behind was permanent. The message was simple: lie, steal, or speak out, and we'll crush your truth one knuckle at a time. The rat. Torture adds a new layer of horror. A cage of starving rats is strapped to your body, and a flame heats the cage's far end. The rats, desperate to escape, claw and chew through you to get out. Used in medieval Europe, especially in the Netherlands, for prisoners of war or traitors. It was a nightmare of nature turned weapon. In the 1500s, a Dutch rebel reportedly endured this, his screams drawing a crowd. The psychological terror? Feeling every bite, knowing the rats are eating you alive. Picture your worst pest problem, then make it your executioner. Suddenly, a mouse in your kitchen sounds like a pet. And the worst part? The rats don't kill you instantly. They burrow through soft flesh first. Your stomach, intestines, avoiding bone, chewing around it. You're fully conscious, unable to move, while these little creatures do what instinct demands: survive. The cage rattles with their frenzy, your body jerks with every bite. There's no strategy to endure it, no trick to make it stop. Just fire, fur, teeth, and time. The torturer might talk you through it, calmly explaining each stage while the heat rises. It wasn't just torture, it was psychological ruin, a reminder that even the lowest creature could become your executioner when the world decided you were worth less than a rat's freedom. Flaying knife takes it further. Let's talk about the flaying knife. This one's for those who really pissed off a king or betrayed a crown. It's a blade, razor sharp, curved just right, not made to kill, but to peel. Layer by agonizing layer, your skin is sliced off while your heart keeps pumping. Used in ancient Persia, later in medieval Europe, it was a public event. In 1307, a French knight named Pierre de Remy was caught betraying the crown. His punishment? Flaying alive. His skin was nailed to a wall like a trophy, a warning to anyone else thinking of playing both sides. The horror isn't just the pain. It's watching strips of your body fall away like shavings from a block of cheese. Your hands, arms, chest, each part exposed, raw, red, nerve endings, screaming. Imagine a chef peeling a potato, but the potato is awake, begging. And that little paper cut you cried about last week feels like a lullaby compared to this. Then heretic's fork. At first glance, the heretic's fork doesn't look like much, just a metal rod with two sharp prongs at each end. But once it's strapped between your chin and chest, or sometimes your throat and collarbone, you realize the horror. If you nod, swallow, or even flinch, those spikes drive in. No sleep, no rest. Just sharp pain waiting to punish the smallest movement. Popular during the Inquisition, it was used on heretics, witches, or anyone who dared question authority. Imagine being so scared of nodding off that you force your eyes open while your body begs for rest. Sounds like finals week, but with a death wish. And it wasn't just physical, it was psychological warfare. Victims were sometimes forced to wear it for days, chained to a wall, unable to lie down. No sound allowed, no words. If you even whispered, the fork punctured your tongue or your chest. In Spain, one prisoner lasted 4 days before the fork pierced through his voice box after a single sob. Imagine being silenced not by fear, but by steel. You're wide awake, muscles twitching, throat dry, and every breath has to be shallow or it's game over. Worse still, they often painted the forks with religious inscriptions like, "I am a heretic," or "I denied the truth," turning pain into humiliation. Sleep deprivation, immobilization, and piercing punishment, all packed into one cruel little device. Forget insomnia. This is sleep torture with spikes and scripture. The next time you nod off in a boring meeting, thank God there's no fork waiting to punish you for it. The heretic's fork didn't just make you confess. It made you too terrified to speak again. The Spanish Tickler. Don't let the name fool you. There's nothing playful about the Spanish Tickler. It's a set of iron claws, curved like meat hooks, mounted to a handle. The torturer rakes it across your body, tearing through skin, muscle, and sometimes even bone. Used in Spain, France, and Germany, especially during witch hunts, it was meant to rip you open bit by bit. Victims were chained naked to a wall or post while the tickler went to work, starting at the arms and working down. Flesh peeled like bark from a tree. Screams echoed down stone corridors. There was no tickle here, just total anatomical destruction. And it wasn't a one-time deal. They often worked in shifts. One torturer would claw you for hours, then take a break while someone else picked up where they left off. In 1478, during the Spanish Inquisition, A woman accused of sorcery was tickled for 3 straight days. Her arms flayed down to bone, her chest carved open like a butcher's slab. She never confessed, but that didn't stop them. The point wasn't always confession. It was domination, control, fear. A warning to anyone else even thinking about resistance. The worst part? Sometimes they'd tickle slowly, deliberately, to avoid bleeding you out too fast. The goal was to keep you alive, aware, and screaming. No anesthesia, no mercy, just iron claws and imagination. Every pass tore deeper. Every hour dragged longer. And when it was over, if you survived, you were barely human. Just a shredded shell with memories you'd begged to forget. The Spanish Tickler didn't just wound your body, it erased your sense of self. So yeah, next time someone says, tickle fight, maybe keep a little historical context in mind. If you thought those were bad, the Brazen Bull is in a league of its own. Picture a hollow bronze bull, big enough to lock you inside. A fire's lit underneath, roasting you alive while your screams travel through pipes, sounding like a bull's roar for the crowd's delight. Invented in 6th century Sicily by tyrant Phalaris, it was tested on enemies, and maybe even its creator Parallaeus, who screamed for days. The psychological horror? You're not just dying. You're a spectacle. You're paying a twisted performance. Imagine being the main dish at a barbecue where the crowd cheers for your screams. This isn't just torture. It's a one-way ticket to despair. Who needs Spotify when your agony's the soundtrack? So, which torture device would you regret facing most? The Brazen Bull, no question. It's not just the burning. It's the complete erasure of your humanity. Locked in that metal beast, your screams become music for a laughing crowd. In Sicily, victims like Parallaeus endured days of agony. No quick death, no dignity, just you, the fire, and an audience loving every second. It's not just pain. It's being reduced to a sick joke while you roast. Picture yourself trapped, knowing your suffering is someone's entertainment. Suddenly, your worst day, burnt toast, late for work, feels like a 5-star vacation, doesn't it? Still think you're tough? Medieval torture wasn't just about breaking bones. It was about shattering your soul. No lawyers, no rights. Just you and a sadist with a toolbox. Next time your Wi-Fi drops or your boss emails you at midnight, be glad you're not strapped to a wheel, chewed by rats, or roasting in a bowl. So, which device would you survive? Trick question. Nobody walks away from these. Drop a comment with the one that'll haunt your nightmares. And subscribe if you're thankful you're living in 2025, not 1325. Thank your lucky stars your bad days don't involve spikes, saws, or a red-hot bull. Which one's keeping you up tonight?